Greetings, YouTube. Today we're looking at The Dark Eye. Thank you, Jan, for sending me this book. I'd never had an opportunity to read The Dark Eye, partly because until very recently it was only available in German. This is the latest edition of the game, and has been translated into English. Now, what's kind of interesting about this game is that it's the most popular role-playing game in Germany, but way in the past, back in the days of Gygax, someone was working on a translation of D&D into German. That deal fell through. That team created the Dark Eye. So they were trying to capture the vibe of the classic D&D, but having to make it different enough that, it was not D&D, so they would not get sued. A problem many people dealt with in the past. Of course, some people just out and out made D&D stuff without having the rights to do so, and they seem to have gotten away with it. This is back in an age before the OGL existed. Those horrible, horrible days back when dinosaurs stomped across our gaming tables. So this has become incredibly popular, and it's possibly the most bureaucratic, detailed, and German game I have ever encountered. And I speak of this as someone who comes from a family of German people, even though we've been here for a long time. I've worked with many German people, and there's a certain attention to detail that seems to come out of a German upbringing, and this game just screams that. This game screams, I was designed by engineers. Which it also isn't shocking, because I've met many gamers that were engineers, real life ones. So there seems to be a bit of overlap there. We seem to love our details. And this is going to be a bit of a bear of a review. I'm going to try to keep it as tight as possible. It's a heavy book. It's dense. It took me weeks to read because I was only squeezing in like half an hour of reading a day. And I wanted to make sure I covered as many things in this book as possible. So I read it cover to cover, something I don't normally do with most gaming books. Because most gaming books I can get a gist of what they're talking about, and I can skim over a whole lot of stuff. And this book is very much about the game itself. There is some setting information, but it's not overly deep as far as that is concerned. It doesn't go into too much detail. But there's a lot of stuff in here that's the mechanics of the game, which is good. It's the gaming book. Now, there is an elephant in the room for me, and that is the name of the setting that this is set in. It's called Aventuria. Now, I realize that in German, that means nothing. I've been told that. It's no better than Greyhawk or Faerun. They're just words. But in English, Aventuria sounds like Adventureland. And every time I read this word in this book, it just made me think of Adventureland and made me shake my head. Like, nobody pointed this out to you? None of the folks doing your translations said, hey, maybe you want to pick a better name that doesn't sound quite so silly as Adventureland. But nope, they went with it. Bad choice. The game only uses D6s and D20s. So that's very approachable. D6s are available anywhere. But to play the game properly, you're going to want probably 3 sets of 8 different colored D20s. And I'll explain that later. You might be able to get away with 2 sets. I'm not sure. But 3 sets would be best. And they even give you suggestions for the colors. They even provide you a little color wheel, to show you which attribute is associated with which color. It was very difficult to say. So your 8 attributes are courage, sagacity, which gets an award for the most obscure word I have ever heard of to reference the concept of intelligence or wit. I have never seen a game that used sagacity, so congrats there. Intuition, charisma, dexterity, agility, constitution, and strength. So those are your 8 attributes, and then there are also derived attributes later in the book. Now, what's interesting is attribute checks. All the checks in this are equal or under. So you're rolling a d20, and you want to hit the target number, say it's a 12 or less. Now, if you get a bonus or a penalty to that roll, you don't modify the roll. You temporarily change the actual attribute. I almost said statistic, but the game calls them attributes. So if you have a 12 in strength and you're making a strength check against something, and it's a straight one die roll, and you have a +2 because you're using a board, help you get some leverage, then your strength is temporarily a 14. Then you would then be able to roll a 14 or less to succeed. And if you were in a bad situation, you couldn't get leverage, you had nothing to help you, and your strength, and you had a penalty of 4, your strength would temporarily be 8. I have never encountered a game that made a temporary modification to an attribute, to a core attribute for the character. It was interesting to see that, because I've never seen it before. So kudos for originality. And then it gives you a little blurb about how your stats are like a 7 is very bad, 8 to 9 is miserable, 11 to 10, 10 to 11 is poor, 12 to 13 is acceptable, 14 to 15 is able, 16 to 17 is outstanding, and 18 and higher is a masterly score for that particular attribute. You could have critical successes and critical botches. So 1's a critical success, a 20 is a critical botch, but you need confirmations for both of those. But the confirmation is just a success or a failure. So if you have a critical success of 1, and so long as you just roll under the appropriate attribute, you have confirmed you are critical. If you didn't get that confirmation, then you still succeed, just not as well. Same with the botch. You roll 20 and you roll a 1, you have not made a botch, you've just failed. So there's good things and bad things about that mechanic. It depends on how you're, like in D&D, when it comes, or a Pathfinder, when it comes to attacks, I don't like critical failures, because, for example, fighters get 4 attacks per round at high levels. That just gives them 4 chances to fail, and for some reason they fail more often than characters that are first level who only get 1 attack per round. That seems weird to me. The combat in this is interesting because I kind of like the fact that there's passive armor. So your armor gives you a passive defense that says your armor's worth 5, so it takes 5 off your damage. But there's also active, which is one is just a dodge. Ha-ha! Woo! And you can roll that against many things, but you can't, for example, you can't dodge arrows. But then there's also parry, and you can use your hands. That's not good. You're going to take damage when you do that, unless you're parrying another person's hands. But you can use a weapon, or better, a shield, which is twice as good as a weapon at parrying, which makes perfect sense. You can parry more than 1 attack a round, but each successive attack is harder to parry. Again, that makes sense. If you're being attacked by 2 guys, both of which you can attack twice for some reason, you got 4 attacks coming in, you are probably not going to be able to parry all of them. 1 or 2 are going to get through, but that's just a reflection of reality. So I like that particular mechanic. Well, here's the little chart, by the way, I mentioned. Here's a little chart in there. It shows the colors appropriate for your attribute. Now, the bugbear in this game for me is the skill checks. Every skill check you want to make, and that includes spells, because spells are skills, is 3 die 20. And each of those is associated to 2 particular attributes. So you could have sagacity, intuition, and courage in that order. So you'd have to make 3 different rolls on against each of your stats. Or it could be like sagacity, and intuition. So you get 2 rolls against your sagacity score and 1 against your intuition score. And you can have skills over time in this game. So, for example, you want to do research for something about a demon you're going to have to face. And if it's not overly difficult in the sense that it's not impending doom, you have as much time as you want to do it, and the research is you have access to a decent library, you might have to roll 10 skill checks over the course of 40 hours in game time. That's 30 frigging rolls. That's insane. That is crazy cakes. I read that and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But you can have partial successes because most of your successes are based on how many successes you acquire. And every time you acquire a success, you get a quality level. Now, how do you get your quality levels? This is the interesting thing. You know that skill checks I made? Those are just the base rolls you're making. You also have a skill rank. So say you have a skill rank of 6. You roll your scores, all 3 your die 20. You're making a simple one roll check. And you succeed twice, but you fail once. And you fail that fourth or that third roll. I don't know why I'm sorry. I don't know why I was chumpy there for a second. You fail that third roll rather by 4 points. But you want to succeed. So you take 4 of your skill points and dump it into that roll, bringing it down to the level it needs to be, because remember, it's a roll under. And you telling me a USB device is not recognized. Bizarre. You succeeded now because you spent those points, and this is only per roll. You're not spending the points forever. Every time you make a skill check, you get a replenished skill rank for that skill, and every skill has a different skill rank, of course. But you end up with 2 skill points left. Those skill points, they're then looked at a chart and tells you how many quality levels you get. And if it's only get 2, it's going to bring a quality level of 1. A quality level of 1 is a success, but that's just barely. Okay? You've got there, but not much. The more quality levels you have, because you have lots of skill ranks left over, because you have a high skill rank and you rolled really well, you got 3 1s, then you confirmed the critical and you had a score and a skill rank of 10, you've got like a quality level of like 4. So bingo, lots of success. That's a lot of numbers to play with. That's a lot of stuff to play with. It really is. Having to spend the points every single time you make a skill check, which is 3 die 20 every single time you want to make a skill check. It is the most complex skill system I have ever seen. If anyone out there can tell me of a skill system that is more complex than this, I want to hear about it. I don't want to go through every single page in this book. There's so much going on in this book. Now, this is a point-buy system, so you pick out which race you are. Like an elf or a dwarf costs you more than your base human. Your base human costs you nothing. You spend points on things for your particular society you belong to. And there are different societies. Dwarves have different societies. Humans have different societies. Elves have different societies. That helps give you bonuses to certain skills. You come like a skill package because you come with that. And you have to have a justification for changing that package. Of course, that has to be agreed upon by your GM. And each skill package says, okay, these are the likely skills that you have from your upbringing. These are the ones that you're very likely not to have. And these down here are ones that you're probably never going to have because there's something you're just not exposed to this in your upbringing. And once you've done all that, then you start buying your actual class and you build your class. So you don't have to necessarily buy fighter or thief. In that sense, you can put things together the way you want them. The one exception, if you want to be a spellcaster, you have to buy the spellcasting ability, and that's very expensive. And so if you're going to go into spellcasting, whether it's divine or arcane, that's what you're doing, okay? And you have to start that at your base level because it's not something you can get later because you're born with it or you're not born with it. So you either got it from birth, you have the gift, or you don't have the gift. So you're not picking this up later at another date. Interestingly, also, everyone has a skill in every weapon. Now, you're not good with them, but everyone has access to them. And that seems strange to me, that everyone has some small amount of skill in everything, even if it's the tiniest amount. Guys, I can tell you right now, I know nothing about 99% of the weapons in the world. And it makes no sense to me that I would be considered adept in any way with those weapons. Most weapons I would be swinging with all the skill of a baseball bat. And that makes no sense to me that anyone has the skill in all these different things. But there you go. You can spend lots of your adventure points over time into being very good with your weapons, being good with your armor. You have encumbrance problems. You can buy off some of that encumbrance. So fighters are obviously going to buy off their armor so that they don't have as much encumbrance when they're wearing it. You can buy extra life points. You can buy extra magic points. They're arcane points and divine points. I can't remember what the specific karma points and something else, but that's what they are. They're arcane points and divine points. They're just spell points, and you can buy more of them up to a certain limit. You have maximums depending on what the campaign has been set at. You have like a low-level campaign or a mid-level campaign or an epic campaign, and that tells you how high your stats can be, how many life points you can buy into it, how many skill points you can have, how many arcane spells, spell points you can have. So you can dial this where you ever want it. Character creation is really complex. A hunk of this book is character creation. And the skills and your spells, and again, the spells are skills. You have to buy each and every spell you want to use. You have to buy into a magical tradition. If you're an arcane caster, you could be a guild mage, or you could be a witch. If you're going to be a divine caster, you have to buy into a church of some variety. And they give you all the different churches in here, and they're nice, they're flavorful. We'll get them that. They're all very different from each other, so it's not bland in any way, shape, or form. And of course, your guilds there's the white guild and the gray guild and the black guild, essentially. So you can be goody goodies or neutral people or evil people. Though there is no specific alignment in this game, as far as spellcasters are concerned, that's how it goes. Now, casting spells in this game is something that just amazed me, because a lot of these spells are expensive, so you may not even be able to cast them by yourself. You may have to pool your efforts with another caster. But lots of the spells take more than one action. Now, rounds in this game are flexible. It's like 2 to 6 seconds. I like static rounds. It says every round is X. So if I were going to run this game, I would say every round in my game is going to be X. And that's going to be whatever level I set it at. Probably 3 seconds. 3 seconds is a nice round number. 6 isn't bad, don't mind you, but 3 is good. What does GURPS use 1 or I can't remember, but yeah, the GURPS had a really fine amount of rounds. It came fine in the sense of small. And okay, I lost my train of thought there right there. Oh, multiple rounds for casting some spells. They give an example of someone playing cards with somebody and they think the guy's cheating, so they want to scare him. So they want to cast a spell that will terrify him. So they're sitting across the table from each other. The guy starts to cast a spell. It's going to take him 4 actions. 4 actions. 4 rounds of casting the spell before the spell goes off. And then he has to roll to see if he succeeds against this guy's defense, his spirit, which is a derived statistic from your attributes. Yeah. Not to mention there are conditions, and you can be in pain, and you can be confused, and you can be poisoned, you can be diseased. There's so many conditions and things in this. It's unbelievable. Oh yes, and life points are broken into quarters, and as you get each quarter of your life points go down, you gain a level of pain, which makes it harder and harder for you to do things. It's a gritty combat system, okay? But you're sitting there for 4 rounds trying to cast that spell. And they give one example. The guy throws a beer in his face. The guy makes his roll to resist being disturbed by this. His concentration is strong, so doesn't get his concentration broken, keeps casting, and eventually gets the spell off. But who in their right mind sits there while some guy casts a spell at them? This is a world where spells exist. He knows that spells exist. All he has to do is get up and walk away. Spells have very short ranges by and large. Or he just tips the table over on, or picks his mug up and doesn't toss his beer in it, but smacks the guy in the skull with it. That would end the spell, very likely. Spells that take multiple rounds for a very simple effect, scaring someone, makes me think that this game hates mages. Some of the spells in this game can take half an hour to cast. An example is invisibility and gaseous form. Half an hour to cast either of those spells, and if you succeed, I think it's 10 minutes per quality level. So you could get a 10-minute spell after having spent half an hour casting it, and here's the big thing. It only affects your body, not your clothing, not your gear. You have to be naked to have your invisibility spell work. And if you cast the gaseous form, your gear and your clothing fall off, you float away, and when you turn back into your form because the spell runs out, you're naked. Who casts those spells? Who? That's insane. You want to make a magic item? You have to permanently spend your arcane spell points or your spell points into the magic item. Then you have to, at later dates, spend experience points to buy your arcane spell points back. And until then, your spell pool has been reduced because you put points into a magic item. So obviously, it's a world with not a lot of magic items. You want to have a magic sword? Magic swords pretty much don't exist, but your buddy, the spellcaster, can spend 8 hours to enchant your sword so you can go fight a demon tomorrow, and it should a minimum stay magic for a day, but it might last as long as a week if you get a lot of quality levels. For a huge dump of arcane spell points, which he may not get all them back by the time you fight the person that you've just magicked the spell to go deal with, but in case 8 hours. This game hates spellcasters. I would never play a spellcaster in this game. What baffles me about this game is it's incredibly complex. It is more complex than Pathfinder, for example, which is often everyone's bugbear when it comes to game complexity. This is more complex than that, and yet it's got a gritty, low magic, low fantasy feel. It's a very strange combination. If you want to play a gritty game without any magic in it, this could be your engine right here. But I would never play a spellcaster in this game because the game hates them. And I don't know why people like this game in that regard. Who plays a spellcaster when it's incredibly expensive to be one, as far as your character points are concerned? You get your points back slowly. You spend a lot of them quickly. Many of your spells are multiple rounds to cast. Some take half an hour or longer to cast, and you may get a very small result in reply. Changing into another form. They're rare. There aren't a lot of versions of it. And again, takes you a long time to cast the spell. You get a short duration. That's not what I want in my casting. I want to be able to cast a spell in one round, have an effect that lasts multiple rounds. I want dynamic. I want action-based. It's an action-based combat game with lots of dynamism built into it, but it's a glacially slow magic game. And that seems unfair to people that want to play magic users or divine casters. Again, there's a whole lot to chew on here. Each and every skill breaks things down, like what happens when you get different quality levels. Sometimes they're very vague, but again, it's the most complex skill system I've ever seen in the world, and the results can be very loosey-goosey. So it's like high complexity OSR style results. Well, yeah, kind of. This is what happens because there's nothing specific in the game saying that you get X, Y, and Z. Some skills have that, but some don't. It just says you get a better result. So the GM's going to have to wing that, and every time you wing something, you're going to get inconsistent results, which is something I despise as a GM and a player. It's one of the reasons I don't like OSR games. So how a game this complex ended up with a mechanic that made me think of an OSR game is baffling. Their weapon weights are pretty close, which is cool. They have some decent concepts of summoning gens and elementals. Their demons are pretty cool. Their demons are based on the number of horns they have. So the more horns they have, the more power and more danger they are. You can summon them to do services for you. Obviously, you're going to be a bad guy if you're summoning demons. And what's cool is that it's very specific. You have a contract essentially, and they'll do X number of things for you based on your quality level. And thing could be attack someone, open a door for you. So it's very specific. And after they've done X number of things, they're gone. And again, takes a long time to cast that spell. Low magic, gritty feel in a dynamic combat game. It's cognitive dissonance throughout this game for me. All right, so I'm really going on long here, and I apologize. The alchemy rules are cool because they talk about having to have different kinds of alchemy labs, and the big ones require a lot of for very complex things. Can't be moved. It's stuff you have to like have in a house. You shoot again. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. There's just so much in this book to deal with. Oh, you have to buy special formulas to do certain things. So you want to do a specific special formula for an alchemical thing, you have to buy that as a skill, essentially. You have to buy the formula and buy into it. Same thing goes if you want to make a complex instrument. Simple instruments are just a skill check, but complex instruments, say like a harpsichord, you're going to have to buy into the skill because that's reserved secret knowledge owned by a guild, and you have to get that from them. So not just anybody has the blueprints for that. You really have to buy into it and get in and become a member of the guild to get that back. So again, I could literally talk about this game for an hour, which is, I guess, a testament to its interest, because it is an interesting game, but it hates magic users and divine casters. It's got an incredibly complex skill system. The results are often loosey-goosey in OSR, which makes no sense to me. Character development is really complex, more complexity than I like, though there is a lot of detail and a lot of options, so you can really focus in on exactly the kind of thing that you want to play within the confines that you have set for yourself. Dwarves do certain things well and certain things poorly. Same with elves, same with humans. And I'm sure other supplements would allow you to play other races, or you could make up your own races based on the templates they've shown you for the 3 base races that are available. They only had like 4 or 5 different creatures in this to give you reference, which I thought was kind of cheap because you really can't play the game with this unless you're just going to go up against other humanoid people. I guess you could. Oh, orcs in there called coal pelts because they have black fur. I thought that was kind of cool. I think that's German, from like German mythology, but I could be wrong. Or Germanic mythology, I should say. So I want to hear from anyone out there that's ever played Darkeye, what your experience has been with it. I want to hear from Jan what his experience is. I really haven't gotten into details with this. I've been saving this review until I got it done and posted. I'm going to post it pretty much as soon as I can. It's not going to go into the queue because there's lots of videos in my queue. I would not be posting this thing for another 6 months probably. So I'll post this as soon as possible. So Jan gets to listen to the review that based on the book he gave me. And again, I thank you. It's cool. I did enjoy myself, even though it was a bit of a slog, because again, it reads like something that was designed by engineers. It would not shock me that all of them had college degrees and all of them had some experience with being engineers. So let's talk about the Darkeye and what you like about it, what you don't like about it, and anybody thinks that I'm completely off base with my opinions, tell me. I'm willing to hear that. I'm not familiar with it because I've never played the game. I've just read it. But yeah, it is one heck of an experience, I'll tell you that.